Fuck's sake, Harry.
Hello, we are live, and we almost got caught talking about microphones, to be honest, because I'm on my brand new sounding lovely microphone right now. But we are here for the UFC Fight Night Holm versus Vieira Fight Night preview. And we're going to get straight into the action. But before we do, we're going to remind everybody to go and visit our good friends at All Real Nutrition. Head on over to eatallreal.com. Enter the code word SevereMMA and get yourself some delicious protein bars. The best on the market. They have the best bars on the market, and this week they have the best peanut butter on the market as well. A new peanut butter has come out, so head on over there to eatallreal.com. Enter the code word SevereMMA. Get yourself 15% off, lads. Thanks for joining me tonight. We'll try our best not to give out about this card, but it's not the best.
No,
one.
we won't. That lightning, Harry. That lightning over in fucking London that's incredible.
If I die, you know why.
Yes.
Yeah, struck by lightning. I think you do damage to the lightning, though, Harry, rather than the other way around. So, main event: Holm versus Caitlyn Vera, lads. Holm back after a 2-year layoff, almost. Couple of injuries. She's hitting 40 now. She's coming towards the end of her career, but she still can compete, and I think this is going to be a big test for her now, of her skills and where she is. I think she was a little bit, she had slowed down somewhat in her last fight against Irene Aldana. It'll be interesting to see what she's like now after the long layoff. With new fresh blood in the 135-pound division, Sean, do you think, is it wishful thinking that Holm may work her way into another title shot here? I would imagine only if Juliana Pena is the champion, there might be a small chance of it, but it's kind of unlikely at this stage.
I don't think it's unlikely, to be honest. I mean, is it likely? Maybe not, but there aren't that many people. I think the issue at the moment, as you say, and as you very well pointed out, Pena being the champion and rematching Amanda Nunes. Look, it all comes down to what's going to happen in that fight, because if Pena wins that and Amanda Nunes has to move on, then it opens up the door for her and the Randami and probably 5 or 6 other people, and Valentina Shevchenko as well coming up a division, and lots of more things. If Amanda Nunes wins, well, it'll do probably a couple of things. It probably closes the door a little bit on 135 for a lot of people, Holm included, and it closes the door on 145 as well for some people, but also opens the door for Amanda Nunes to go back to 145, and I don't know, it's holding up the division the right thing to say about 135 as the lightning goes off again over in London, but it will delay some people on the way up. So, sometimes we see a fight like this and we kind of think, okay, could it be possibly a number one contender fight? They're both right up there towards the top of the division. Caitlyn Vera is 12-2 now. I'm just looking at it. She beat Miesha Tate last time out. A lot of people were saying coming into that fight, if Miesha Tate had won it on her way back, could she have gotten a title shot? Now, that's because it's Miesha Tate. But also, there aren't that many people who haven't fought Amanda Nunes, as I mentioned before. So, if she can get the win here, I think she's probably pushing herself back up. For Holm, you said she hasn't fought in 2 years, but she has beat Irene Aldana, someone that's rising up, Raquel Pennington, someone that's always there since her loss to Nunes back in 2019. So she's always there or thereabouts as well. She's always there or thereabouts, and this is a very interesting fight. I know we're going to go into it, but you mentioned that she's almost 40, and I think she actually just turned 40 not so long ago, and I think that could play a big part, but I'm sure we'll get into that too.
Yeah, indeed. I think for me, I was very impressed with her in her fight with Aldana. I think she came into that fight with a point to prove, and I think in certain ways that Caitlyn Vera is going to offer probably a little bit more, but a lot similar in what Aldana did. And I think Holm in that fight, she kind of kept Aldana on her heels and couldn't let her settle into the fight. Punches and bunches. She used her sidekick very well, and she does that to keep her opponents at bay, where she likes to fight on the outside. She threw in a couple of takedowns against Aldana. Aldana was guilty of following Holly Holm around a lot. I don't think that's going to be a problem in this fight with Caitlyn Vera. I think Caitlyn Vera is kind of going to get herself into the pocket here and try and land those big shots and try and outscore. I mean, if Holly Holm is landing, and she does like to land punches in like her combinations in 4s and 5s, but if Caitlyn Vera can counter at least one of those with a heavy shot, she's going to win that exchange. And I just want to know what your opinion is on Holly Holm, Harry, as a fighter at this stage in her career, and what you think she can offer.
So I think it's hard to know. Usually when we see a fighter take a little bit of time away, whether it be for injuries or whatever, specifically earlier in their career, we always seem to say, time away from the sport, time away from sparring, allowing some of those niggly injuries to sort of heal up and all of those sorts of things. They come back and generally, okay, there might have been a ring rust unless you're Dom Cruz, but they'll come back a better fighter. Whether that's going to happen to a 40-year-old woman is a very different kettle of fish and a very different question, I think. The Vieira fight to me is actually similar enough in styles to the Aldana fight. I think Vieira is quite a ploddy fighter. I think she does follow. We saw in the Miesha Tate fight that she allowed Tate to come onto her, and she allowed, she threw her 1s and 2s, but Holly's not going to do that, right? You've already mentioned really, really well that Holly sticks on the outside. She has that beautiful sidekick as a rangefinder and as sort of a jousting arm to keep people away. I really enjoy the way that Holly fights if she has a willing dance partner, right? She's able to keep range really well. When she enters the pocket, she enters on her own terms and at nice angles. She's always exiting the pocket in the right way. She's defensively sound when the right fighter comes along. And for me, Vieira is somebody that has a decent jab. She leans a little bit long with her longer combos, and she really likes forcing her way into the pocket to force her opponent to throw strikes for her to counter. She really likes the lead hand uppercut slip counter. She really likes hook counters. We saw that a lot against Miesha Tate. I think in the first couple of rounds, the thing that I took away from the Miesha Tate performance is that variety kills Vieira. When Miesha Tate came to the body and went to the head, she caught Vieira square almost every time. I think the big difference in that fight was impactful striking. Vieira just hits harder, right? So she was winning those rounds. Fine. But against Holly Holm can crack. We know this. We've seen this, right? And the big read I made from the first couple of rounds in the Miesha Tate fight, and Vieira did a little bit to adjust them, is, 1 second, I'm going to cough here, so I'm just going to mute myself. Excuse me, sorry about that. But one thing that she does do that is a flaw, I think, for somebody against Holly Holm is when she plods forward, she keeps her lead hand quite far away from her chin. If I'm an Edmund Shabazian type fighter, or if I'm an Alexander Rakic against Jimmy Manuwa type fighter, and I can just stick a hand in front of her face and come up with a big high kick, I'm going to catch her across the side of the head, right? And that's something that I saw as a glaring flaw in the Vieira stance. So let's see what Holly Holm can find. But the big question for me, and I'll chuck it back to you with this, is who wins the range battle? I go on all the time about range and rhythm and all these sorts of things. If you allow Holly Holm to get into her rhythm, it's so hard to pull her out of it. She's improved so drastically with her takedown defense and offense with the Izzy style wrestling stuff. Caitlyn Vera, we've not seen a ton of takedown defense. We've not seen a ton on the bottom, but I'd be really interested to see who wins the rhythm battles here.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything that you said there. I do think for Caitlyn Vera that this fight is going to be a much more difficult test than Miesha Tate. Even with Holly Holm outside of the cage for the last 2 years. I mean, what impressed me in Holly Holm's fight with Irene Aldana is that what you did say, she did dictate the distance control. She used her lead front side body kick to gauge that distance. She lulls her opponent into this kind of a slow moving, kind of slow paced fight, and then explodes with 5 or 6 punch combinations to kind of push her opponents back. And she varies her strikes very well. And I mean that, you know, she mightn't throw a head kick until round 2 or round 3, but she's always trying to set that up. And when you're not predictable, you're hard to read. And I think that absolutely baffled Irene Aldana in that fight. And I think if she fights and she's looking nearly close to what she was looking against Aldana in this fight, I think that she's going to baffle Caitlyn Vera too, who, you know, has power, has some good feints, but she does slow down in fights. And I think Holly Holm doesn't, she'll set a pace that she'll try, and she'll set a pace. She'll set a pace. I think she's older by more than 5 years. Is she nearly 10 years her junior? Is she?
Than Misha Tate, I think, is the point he was making.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So I think, yeah, it's going to be a puzzle that Caitlyn Vera is going to have to try and solve here. And I think, you know, if she comes in, or if Holly Holm is kind of off her game a little bit, she has some tools to kind of get the win here. And I'm going to let you in, Harry. I see you're bursting at the seams here to kind of add your 2 cents.
Seánie, did you want to just say something, or am I okay to go?
Go on, you can make your point, and I'll come in after.
Sure. So I think the thing that's interesting to me is Holly Holm, you know, okay, she's 40, whatever, but we know who she is now. The changes in her game are incremental, right? We know full well that the dichotomy that Holly Holm presents is, if you allow me to stay on the outside, cut my angles, and stay in my perfect quadrant, I'm going to keep you at bay with my sidekick, and when I'm ready, I'm going to enter the pocket, throw my combinations, and get back out. If you want to pressure me, you have to, 1, get through the sidekick, 2, get through the clinch, and 3, you have to get through the counter-striking, right? Now, Caitlyn Vera, what I saw in the Tate fight, what she did very well, and where she had a lot of success, was when she managed to turn the tide and push Misha Tate back behind I don't know, I'd never know what to fucking call it, so I'm going to call it a quadrant, even though there's not 4 of them. But when they get pushed back behind that far out black line, Vieira then starts to cut the cage off really well, and made Misha Tate really well, maybe not Seánie, but she cut it off well enough that she forced Tate into a choice of whether she got hit on the left hand side on the way out or on the right hand side on the way out. Holly Holm is far harder to do that. She has far better footwork than a Misha Tate, and she'll punish you on the way in. But if you can push Holly Holm back, then it starts to get interesting. But that's the dichotomy. Seánie?
I would agree. My whole crux of this fight is basically what you said there, but I think I have maybe stronger feelings about it in terms of how it's going to go. Let me just preface this first of all by I said at the start, 40 years of age, Misha Tate. I think one of you said we haven't seen her in 2 years. That matters, you know. We can talk about men's MMA and women's MMA. I think Marion Renault is the only 40-year-old woman we've seen in the UFC so far. Maybe there's someone else, but it's something, you know, we've seen down through the years in men's MMA. So it'll be interesting to see what she looks like with 2 years out of the cage as well, and with not only 14 MMA fights or whatever, but a litany of boxing matches as well. She could come in here and look shot and be destroyed. That is a very real possibility in this fight. But let's park that for a second. Let's say that's not necessarily true, and we have a good 90-95% of the last Misha Tate we saw. Harry, you just said there about her footwork. We actually, just in the podcast we just recorded there a few minutes ago, we were talking about footwork as well, and a little bit, and I gave the example of Holly Holm as someone with very good defensive footwork. And I probably wouldn't say that again. I haven't thought about it here for the last five minutes. She is very smart defensive movement, if you want to put it that way. And by defensive, I mean ultra defensive. Like, she has the type of defensive footwork you would want Anthony Pettis to have. Just get the fuck out of there and get as far away from your opponent as you possibly can as the lightning goes off. That's exactly what Holly Holm, the way she fights on the outside. And she can land those counters, as you talked about there, Harry. She can land the big head kick. I think that's happening less and less. I don't think she's as good at doing it anymore, but she can do it, right? But she will hit you with that side kick to the body, or the knee, or the oblique kick the odd time, the Jacksons are famed for, or the outside leg kick, or a jab that lands 4 feet in front of your head. And now, this might sound like I'm being negative towards Holly Holm, but actually, in fact, I think that's the reason why she must be a massive favorite going into this fight. Because the hardest thing for me to do in mixed martial arts in a stand-up fight is cut off the cage against someone like Holly Holm, who is ultra defensive and ultra circling, it's very tough. Very, very tough. That's all Holly Holm wants to do. All she wants to do is circle and get away. Landing strikes or doing damage or anything like that is secondary for Holly Holm. Defense and not getting hit is her first MO. I don't see Caitlyn Vera as a good enough fighter to cut off the cage against someone that good. Now, maybe Holly Holm is slowed down. Maybe she isn't the fighter she used to be. Maybe she'll fight a different game plan. All those things, we've seen them all happen in mixed martial arts. But if it's the Holly Holm fighting the game plan that she does, I don't think she can do it. You know, you said that there, Harry, she's good at when she gets behind the quadrant, as you call it, at cutting off the cage. And, you know, that's not a bad shout. But getting close enough to get her behind the quadrant to cut her off and do that from that area is going to be tough. And I think that's the crux of this fight. I think if she can get her there, she can land some big shots if she's not taking a couple of counters or a couple of head kicks. And I think she can probably get a couple of takedowns as well if she's looking for them. But my prediction for this fight is a bore fest, an absolute fucking bore fest. We've had a lot of them over the last couple of weeks, and we're going to get another one here on Saturday night, I have a feeling.
Yeah, I'd love to disagree with you, but I really can't. I think it's probably going to be the boring decision one way or another. And you know, you mentioned Vieira getting the takedown there. We've seen Holm kind of go for takedowns too in her recent fights. You know, especially when her back is against the wall and when some of her opponents have been landing punches, she does have that takedown in her back pocket too, which is kind of a new wrinkle in her game and a very important one too. And decent top control when she does get the fight down as well, and we've seen that in her last fight with Aldana. But I'm sure you're probably thinking the same as myself and Sean. Harry, you're likely thinking that this fight is going to go to a decision. Do you have it for Holm or do you have it for Vieira?
I'm pretty strong with Holm. Like, I think it's important when I do some analysis to show ways that both can win. Do I think Vieira is going to implement that game plan? Absolutely not. Good luck in 25 minutes nailing Holly Holm to a specific point in the cage where she can't find a way out and you're not going to get clipped on the way in. I don't think Vieira has enough variety in her strikes. I don't think she has enough volume in her striking to really pin Holly Holm down. And if you're allowing Holly Holm, as Seanie's already said, to just get on her bike, land shots when she wants to land them, and lull you into this cat and mouse game where you're going to get more and more frustrated and you're going to have to step in harder to the pocket, which allows Holly Holm to counter in a much, much more proficient way. It's going to be a very long night. I suspect, unless the intangible variables come into play, where, you know, she's 40 and whatever, I suspect a Holly Holm clean sweep of a decision, yeah.
Indeed. Well, we talk about this one being a boring fight. I don't think the co-main event is going to be a boring fight. It's on paper, it's shaping up to be a very exciting encounter. I know you're a big fan of Michel Pereira, Sean, and his wild antics. And, you know, that's something that we haven't seen all too much in his previous 4 fights. He's kind of reined it in a little bit. And, you know, it's something that I really noticed when I was watching him back in preparation for this tonight was... I watched back the Fialho fight and he was really technical in a really impressive way. It was some switch up from when we first seen him in the UFC to what we've seen against Fialho, who is a good fight. I know you're high on him, Sean. I am high on that man as well. And especially he outstruck him over 3 rounds. He used the front teep to the body excellently well and kind of took the gas tank away from Fialho. And I think, you know, Graham mentioned on the main podcast that if Pereira decides to kind of get into a technical striking battle here with Ponzinibio, that he's going to lose. I would beg to differ a little bit based off that last performance against Fialho. What's your thoughts on it? And what's your thoughts on Pereira's change up from a wild man into a kind of a more technical fighter?
First on the aggressive part, I agree with Graham in a way. I think you give Ponzinibio more of a chance to beat you if you turn it into a technical matchup. I think if you up, and now I was actually talking about this fight earlier. I think you need a combination of both, right? I think you need to up the ante. I talked about it last week with Fabian Edwards against Machida. You have to let those hands go. You have to make them pay. You have to land shots. But I also think, and there was a fight last week, Harry, you mentioned it a few times since the Trinaldo fight, where he got knocked down. He didn't go, or went in for like a double leg and tried to take him down. I think in this fight, right, if Michel Pereira lands a big knockdown against Ponzinibio, I think this is the sort of fight where he needs to let him get back up and start fighting him again. But in a very violent but technical way. I think there needs to be a bit of both of that. But he can't give Ponzinibio a chance. I think the way Ponzinibio wins this fight is if he gives him a chance. If he's not throwing hard enough on the outside, if he's not landing those big, powerful shots, if he gets into maybe a ground battle. Now, Pereira is not bad on the ground. He's a very good top game and can land some very good ground and pound and all. So not just that, but if just don't give him a chance. And we can obviously talk about that more a little bit maybe. On your second question about him changing over, look, if I'm selfish, I'd want Michel Pereira to fight the way he fought, you know, spinning back wheel fist fucking off the top of the cage.
The cartwheel somersault count was only at 1 the last time. He did 4 in the first round of his UFC debut. You know what I mean?
I love fighters like that. I would love him to do that forever. Look, his UFC record at the end of his time in the UFC would probably be like, 3-12 or something, you know, and he'll be gone. But I would love to see him fight like that. You can't blame him for switching things up and for fighting more like this. But I don't think he's lost it either, though. I don't think he's lost the ability to land those big strikes and to be wild when he needs to be wild. Like, you know, we've heard Daniel Cormier commentating about him and telling him, you know, he needs to fight like a wrestler and all this shit. But if Pereira loses that totally, he will lose what makes him great. And I think a big part of it as well with Pereira, if we forget about technique, forget about tactics and all that, it's about having fun for him. And if he goes in there and he's not having fun, if he's playing a complete game, that's not a way that Michel Pereira, I don't think, is going to be successful. You have to know the sport, but you also have to know the fighter. And I think that is, that is the way forward for him. So, you know, your question, I think he needs a combination.
Yeah, I would somewhat agree. And I mean, we do see some flying knees. We do see some, like, I think the explosiveness that he was putting into his cartwheels and his somersaults, we're now seeing those based off some good techniques. That front teep kick to the body, Harry, is excellent. His work to the body against Fialho was very good. Even better as the rounds kind of went on when he started to drain the gas tank of Fialho. Obviously, he didn't want to exchange all too much in the pocket with someone like Fialho, who has serious power and can put you out with one punch. Ponzinibio against Jeff Neal was, it was a close fight. I thought that Ponzinibio started slow and started on the back foot, and that didn't work out for him. I thought that he was much, much better when he was moving forward and kind of getting off his shots first. What way do you see both of these fighters approaching this fight, Harry? And who do you kind of think will get the best of it?
So Sean stole essentially the crux of my analysis, as usual. And that's that Pereira has to come in here and be unorthodox. I don't mean unorthodox in the sense that he drains the gas tank in the first round, doing mad capoeira style, jump spinning, everything. But I think an element of that is going to be important. If you look at the Jeff Neal fight, the first round, Ponzinibio is frustrated. Why is he frustrated? Because Jeff Neal is in and out of the pocket with a variety of footwork. He's in and out. He's showing him angles. He's offering him looks. The feints are awkward. The hand feinting is awkward. Everything is just a little bit awkward. Now, we know that that's Jeff Neal, right? That's how he fights. But Ponzinibio couldn't quite work out his own footwork. He was constantly losing the footwork battle. He was constantly backing out. And Neal was able to clip him in that. In the Li fight, in the Li Jingliang fight, the Leech, the inability to make the read of that left hook was alarming to me. Li Jingliang showed him that left hook at least 10 to 12 times before he eventually slipped and caught him with it and put him away. The two things to me that are alarming for Ponzinibio, if Michel Pereira is able to turn up, and I think we have to say if, and I'll capitalize on that point in a second, but the things that are alarming for Ponzinibio is his inability to make reads in fights. And the secondly is, or at least adaptations to the reads that he's making. And the second is how he performs against more unorthodox footwork and unorthodox shot selections. Leading that into Michel Pereira, if Michel Pereira comes in and maybe throws a couple of spinny things every now and again and doesn't just enter in on a straight line, doesn't just enter in on orthodox angles, we could see Ponzinibio frustrated in the same way. I think when Ponzinibio gets his rhythm going, and he has sort of an up and down orthodox striking battle where I'm going to come in on this line and you're going to come in on this line, and I'm going to throw the same setups and you're going to throw the same setups, and whoever lands, lands. He has a great jab, he has a lovely leg kick, and his timing's good. But if I'm Michel Pereira, I want to give birth. I want to be a phoenix and die, and the new phoenix to rise out of the ashes that has a little bit of that mad bastard in him. And I just want to see a little bit of that. Throw Ponzinibio off the game, offer him some unorthodox footwork, and see how he reacts this time. Because history tells us that he doesn't do well when that happens.
Yeah, indeed. I think for me, when I've been looking back at Pereira, yes, I'm excited to see him throw some crazy shit, but I'm also pretty excited to see him develop into this technical fighter. And, you know, if he kind of finds himself into that role, I think that he'll be a major player in the welterweight division. The man is only 28 years of age right now, so he's got plenty of time to do it. I think with Ponzinibio, I don't think he's been the same fighter. You know, I think he had a bone infection and some serious injuries and stuff like that. He hasn't really looked the same fighter as the
Tentative,
guy.
Right?
Yeah, that's it. It's like he can't get back into his flow because he won something like 8 fights in a row at one stage in the welterweight division, which is not easy to do, and was on a good run doing that. Don't think he's looked like that kind of fighter since he's come back from that long layoff. And I think if Jeff Neal can cause him trouble with his movement, I think that Pereira is going to cause him even more trouble here. Will he get the finish? I don't know. Ponzinibio is tough. He's hard to get out of there. It'd be a real statement if Pereira could get him out of there, but it's a real South American battle, Sean, between Brazil and Argentina here. Old school South American rivalry.
Indeed, yeah. No, I wonder will that play into it a little bit, maybe. You know, will there be a bit of that national pride? And I know, you know, two very proud nations there, and there may be a bit of that with it as well. But look, it's a very interesting point, and I talked a lot about Pereira there, but I think your points are well made about Ponzinibio as well. I think, look, if there's one thing he's shown in the last couple of fights, is that he isn't what he used to be, but he's also not done. You know, he's not a guy that's prepared to be done anyway. You know, that Baeza fight, you're a guy who's been out with that horrific injury, which you just talked about there, Ian, retired by all accounts, you know, and then you getting the shit beat out of you against one of the top prospects in the world. And then what happens? You know, you come back, you dig deep inside yourself, and you win that fucking fight. And that's another reason why I said earlier on as well, why Pereira can't give him a chance. Because Pereira could be 2 rounds ahead here. He could be 2.5 rounds ahead here, and he gives him one chance, and suddenly he's lost. And I think Ponzinibio still, it's the most important thing. He still has that fight in him. You know, he mightn't be the same guy he once was, but he still has that fight in him. And, you know, myself and Harry just did a full podcast about having durability and having fight in you. Which you'll be able to hear over on patreon.com/SevereMMA podcast in a few weeks. And that's a big part of it. I don't think it'll be enough here. I don't think it'll be enough here, but it's an exciting fight. And look, it's a big test. It's a good yardstick for where Michel Pereira is in his career. And it mightn't look like it's a good yardstick for where Ponzinibio is, but I think if Ponzinibio can go in and win this fight, I think it actually shows more than his recent fights. And he looked good at stages against Jeff Neal, better, I think, especially obviously than the start of the Baeza fight. But if he can put 3 rounds together, it'll be a totally different fight. You know, if he can come back, if that was the injury, if it was him recovering, if he's now back to his best, and he's not the oldest guy in the world. No, you probably have the age there in front of you, lads. It's not impossible for him to come back to his best. It's not like it's just a downward trajectory all the way. And if it's not, and if he looks as good as he once looked, it's a damn tough fight. A damn tough fight for Michel Pereira.
For sure.
On the matchmaking, actually.
Sorry, go on. 35 years of age. Fire ahead, Harry.
Like, I think the point about the matchmaking is a fantastic one. Like, there have been some gems of matchmaking in the last couple of cards. Now, overall, this card, okay, fine, not great. But this is a bit of a gem because you had a guy, as you've said, 8 fight winning streak in the welterweight division is nuts. It's absolutely nuts. Brilliant. Comes in, has the injury, fine, whatever. Pereira, it's very rare that you see a fighter reinvent themselves Very, very rare, especially when they get to the big show, right? You may see an amateur fighter that turns out to be a wrestler, falls in love with striking, and is now a striker. You may see that. That's way more common. But when you get to the big show, and you've gotten to the big show being this absolute fucking wild man, and the next time he comes out, he looks like a rudimentary stand-up striker with a bit of a takedown defense and maybe a spinning back fist here and there. That's very rare. So we could be seeing an incredible evolution in front of our hands with Michel Pereira. And as Seánie just pointed out, Ponzinibio, we're going to find out, is he the gatekeeper to the elite echelons of this division or the upper tiers of this division? Or are we going to see him come back? Is Michel Pereira a brand new fighter? Can he do both? Can we see him dig all the way down into the depths of the fibers of his soul and drag out a win if it gets dirty and gritty? Are we going to see him come out and be the wild man again? There's so many questions coming out of this fight. And I think that's why this is great matchmaking. Jesus, I sound like Spencer, don't I?
There's nothing wrong with that. I think, when you lose to a blown up featherweight like Tristan Connolly, you have to be asking yourself some serious questions. I think Pereira has asked himself those questions, and I think he's responded in a good manner, to be honest. He had that loss to Diego Sanchez as well, but that was an illegal knee and whatever about that. But I think I'm excited for Pereira. I look at, in a ways, I'm kind of like Sean. I do like to see that mad shit. But we talked about last week, sometimes you have to sacrifice a little bit of entertainment to win fights, and especially in the UFC, and if you want to compete and climb up the ladder. So that's that for the co-main event. Anybody have anything else to add before we move on to the next fight? All good. Chidi Njokuani is fighting Dusko Todorovic in the next fight. I'm going to go do a quick run through of that fight. Chidi came in through the Dana White's Contender Series. Good, solid kickboxer. He's had some previous experience in Bellator before moving over to the UFC. Through the Contender Series, picked up a win there. Looked very good in his last fight against Vieira. Knocked out Vieira in 15 seconds with a huge overhand right. He's 9 first-round finishes and is a very entertaining fighter. Big power. In against Dusko Todorovic here, who is probably going to come in here and look to take the fight down. Has been known to be a slow starter in some of his fights. I think if he doesn't get the fight down here, he's going to be probably taken out with inside one round. I think he's going to try and close the distance and make this a kind of a dirty and a gritty fight. Is good in top control, and I think this is just going to be a striker versus grappler. Very, it's a difficult enough kind of it can be a tricky enough one for Njokuani, but I think if he can keep the fight standing, he's probably going to knock Todorovic out, and then we should probably give him someone much higher on the cusp of the top 15, I think, because he's getting on there. Anyone have anything to add about that, or shall we move on?
Can I just quickly say, first of all, the best name in MMA history, Chidi Bang Bang Njokuani. It does not get better than that, first of all. And I think one big thing that has happened in Njokuani's career, if you're an MMA fan, you've probably heard of Chidi Njokuani, his brother Anthony Njokuani, for years around, known predominantly as a very exciting striker. I think one thing he's added to his game is a bit of wrestling, and it's offensive wrestling more than defensive wrestling. And he's a very good faker, throwing shots in the middle of the cage, but sometimes it does get him caught in a bit of a clinch. And I think his ability to take someone down from that clinch before they take him down is actually something which has changed his game around a bit. He did it very well in the Dana White Contender Series fight as well. Obviously, his last fight only ended in 16 seconds. So I think that might actually be a key here against Todorovic. I could actually see him landing on top of Todorovic at some point in this. That'll be an interesting battle if he can do that. Todorovic has a very, very limited ways to win this fight. But as I said, and you correctly said, Ian, if Todorovic can get on top of him, he's very, very good there as well, very strong. Todorovic can hit as well. Not the worst striker in the world, but I think Njokuani is just smarter on the feet. I really like his striking, but it's not the sort of striking that doesn't get you into grappling battles as well, and that might be a little bit of his problem.
Yeah, I think in ways what you said, I feel that Njokuani is going to be playing with fire if he does choose to grapple. And likewise, I think Todorovic is going to be playing with fire if he chooses to solely keep the fight on the feet. I mean, Njokuani has some lovely feints, switches stance quite often, and it's hard to get a read on. I think Todorovic is probably going to come forward with some big shots, try and push him back, get him against the cage, and try and make it a dirty fight. But you're leaving yourself open there, and if he lands, you're going to be put out. Do you have anything to add to this, Harry, or shall we move on? Let's move on to the next one. Next fight, Harry, is Poliana Viana versus Tabitha Ricci, the Battle of Brazil in the strawweight division. Tell me how you see this fight going.
Not great is how I see this fight going, if I'm really honest. What can I say? Okay, so I'll start with Poliana Viana. Extremely rudimentary striking. Extremely rudimentary. I mean, hands stuck at her chest level, chin up in the air. You know, she changes stance now and again, but her feet are quite close together. And, you know, it's not a great look. It's really not a great look. I think one thing I will say is, you know, a fighter is a grappler when they're locking up a body triangle in close guard, right? That's definitely something we know. You're a grappler. What's a body triangle for? Generally, a body triangle is posture control. If you're on the back, it's used because you can press your hips through somebody's spine and you can control their spine that way. From close guard, it's a similar thing. You're pulling down on the spine to stop posture control. What we saw in her last fight, where she grabbed an armbar against Mallory Martin, was essentially horrendous defensive jiu-jitsu from Mallory Martin. But look, when she wrapped up the triangle from an overhook and bicep control, she oscillated really well between a triangle, an armbar, and landing elbows from inside that triangle. I'll get Seánie to give me the true definition of that word in a second. But look, that was good. It was clear that she's a grappler. It's clear that she's a submission artist. Ricci has much more movement on the feet. She's able to move pretty well. She had an absolute nightmare of a UFC debut against Manon Fuero, a weight class up, and just got absolutely blasted out of there. But look, these things do happen. Fuero is a ferocious striker, and Ricci seems like she's a bit of a judo player with, again, very, very rudimentary striking. Viana jumped close guard in her fight against Mallory Martin. If I'm Viana, I'm probably doing the same thing. Forget getting judo, hip toss, Ducci matted all over the gaff. Just jump close guard and play jiu-jitsu is the honest answer I think that's going to happen here, because both of these ladies are not great. They're really not.
Indeed. And that gets us through that fight. On to the next one. Eric Anders versus Park Ju-young. I think this is going to be a good fight. Eric Anders has been kind of topsy-turving up to 205, back down to middleweight, keeping us guessing. I think this is a winnable fight for Eric Anders, but also a potential banana skin as well for him. Ju-young Park is a guy who likes to just storm forward, throw caution to the wind, take a slap, give a slap, and sometimes he wins doing that, and sometimes he loses. And we saw that in his last fight. With Eric Anders, I think he's just going to be like moving forward, trying to close the distance with some sloppy shots, moving forward, get the fight against the cage, clinch, take the fight down, kind of dominate. And, you know, Eric Anders is coming to the latter stages of his career, but at one stage, remember when he lost that close split decision to Lyoto Machida in Brazil? That was razor close. He's kind of been on a savage downward spiral since that fight. Had a horrific time against Andre Muniz in his last fight at 185.
These things do happen, though.
Yeah, he's a beast. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, absolutely horrific time. If he does get the fight down, though, does like to land damage off his back, but I can honestly not see Park Ju-young taking this fight down. You're looking forward to this fight, John, aren't you? It's kind of a highlight of the main card.
I think they're both very similar fighters, or at least the early edition of Eric Anders is similar to what Park is now. I just have a feeling, right, that if Anders has gone back and watched, you know, like we've done a few of Park's most recent fights, I think he'll say, look, I can take this guy. He's too open. He throws too many shots. He thinks he can knock a guy out. Well, do you know what? Let me do the same, and we'll see who'll be right. You know, we'll see who can knock the guy out first. And I actually think if he does do that, I think he'll win the fight. So I kind of hope he does that. Like, I feel like Eric Anders is one of these guys, right, who, as you said, was on a very good run and then loses to Machida, and then he has to change everything up, right? And then he wins a couple of fights, he loses another one, he has to change everything up. Like, sometimes you're just better off. Keep on fighting at the same way, get better at the way you are fighting, and then rise through the ranks that way. And it just feels like, you know, I said it there, and I saw Harry nodding his head. Fight like the way he did early in his career. What way does he fight now? It's kind of like I'm not sure what Eric Anders. Are we going to see?
He's a grinder. That's what he's turned into. And it's no good. It's boring. Like, I mean, it's boring. He wants to get guys up against the cage. He wants to grind on him, make it a boring fight. That's what he did against Darren Stewart. No more than 3 or 4 punch combinations, and then shot in for a takedown straight away. And I think, I agree with you 100%. He's either going to do that and probably win, but win boring, or just fucking throw caution to the wind here and let's throw some leather.
Let's throw some leather. I like Park as well. I think he's great value. Like, Park is great value. This could be, look, as you say, you could push him against the fucking cage and it might be 15 rounds of boredom. Or it could be an absolute banger. And
I hope it's not 15 rounds anyway. We'll never watch MMA again.
No, obviously. But anyway, it has the makings of a good fight, as they'd say in Tipperary.
It absolutely does. And I know plenty about fighting down in Tipperary as well.
Dirty bastards up Cork.
Hey, Kilkenny. Harry, do you have anything to add about this fight before me and Sean go all hurling?
Let's go hurling, lads. Fuck it.
What county you support in hurling, Harry?
I'm going to say none, just in case. I'm not taking any sides.
You have to take one here. Come on. You have to pick a county. Go on, let's do it.
Kilkenny.
Oh, fuck. Limerick. Fuck it.
That's the real sunshine supporter. Just the sunshine supporters.
I know nothing about hurling. I don't know what I've just admitted to. I have no idea.
You
wouldn't be allowed to say that, Harry, what you said in some parts of Ireland. That's all I say.
You'll be not in Kilkenny anyway. There'll be jealousy. There'll be fair jealousy.
Eric Anders, Park Ju Young. How do you kind of see it going down?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you guys have said. I mean, look, confidence is an absolutely massive thing. And I think the underbelly of what you guys have just said is the Lyoto Machida loss clearly shot Eric Anders' confidence to bits, right? And we've seen the slow rebuild of that and the up and down and the oscillation and sort of the trials and tribulations that have come with that. I would like to see Eric Anders believe in himself a little bit more. I think that's something that Park Ju Young, sorry, I've completely, absolutely blasted his name out of my brain, that Park has really had. He does have loads of confidence. He comes in with that big fucking shiny head of his and he's like, I'm just going to ram it in front of you and see what happens. I think Eric Anders is the far more skilled fighter overall, if we just go fighter A, fighter B, skill for skill. And Eric Anders should take this, really.
Yes, I agree as well. I think 3 wins since 2018. Your boy Eric Anders needs a win in this
horrendous
fight.
Name though, isn't it?
Worst nickname? Worst.
Yeah, it's probably the worst. We've gone from one of the best to the worst.
The best to the worst, yeah.
Yeah, it's terrible. But we do that sometimes on Fight Nights cards. And talking about going from the best to the worst, Harry, talk to me about Joseph Holmes versus Alan Adamdevsky.
Just before you start, who the fuck are these lads?
I have no idea. So if you want to brush over these, it's totally fine.
I didn't even research them, so we'll move on.
Perfect. On to the next one. Parker Porter.
But just before we move on, can we make up names for him? I kind of want to call Joseph Holmes Joe Daddy Holmes. I feel like that'd be a good nickname for him. Alan Amadovsky. It feels like it needs to be AAA. So I want to be a
Alan
good name.
A-Train.
Yeah, that's a proper MMA shit nickname, isn't it?
Alan Ambulance Driver Amadovsky.
What about the Atom Bomb? Alan Amadovsky.
Avalanche. Because Avalanche is a load of hurting on you. That's good, isn't it?
Oh, I've got it.
Let's see if they actually do have nicknames.
Armbar
Amadovsky. I love it.
There you go. Oh my god.
Oh my god.
I just checked up Joseph Holmes's. Joseph Ugly Man Holmes.
That's a great nickname.
It's brilliant.
That's a fucking brilliant nickname.
It's brilliant. Fair play to him. Let me see what Adamdowski has.
He's never
got one.
He's never won by submission. So if he wins by armbar this week,
no time like the present.
That's
he has to be nicknamed
officially given to him by Sean Sheehan. So look, we made that fight somewhat exciting, guys. So fair play to us. And on to the next one, which is Parker Porter versus Jolton Almeida. It's not in the light heavyweight division for Almeida. It is in the heavyweight division. He has taken this at short notice. Parker Porter has stepped in. Almeida was supposed to be fighting Maxim Grisham, who had to pull out, wanted to remain on the card. So the UFC does what the UFC does and put in a 265-pound heavyweight to fight a light heavyweight. This makes this fight more intriguing. I think on a skills level, that Almeida is head and shoulders above Parker Porter in all areas. Explosive striker, the Brazilian Habib is what they call him. And if you watch his fights, you'll know exactly why. I think on his Dana White Contender Series, Almeida didn't throw one shot and went for the takedown straight away and got it. On his UFC debut, he threw maybe a 3-punch combination and then immediately shot in like lightning speed to take the fight down. He's going to have to be a little bit more technical. He won't be able to use his strength in this fight. Like he's not going to be picking up someone like Parker Porter. So I take that scowl off your face, Harry Powell.
Have you seen much of his striking, lads? Because I went and looked and I couldn't find much of it, to be honest.
There's not much out there. I mean, that's why I said he didn't throw any shots in his first fight. He just wants to get you down to the ground. They call it the Dagestani handcuff. We'll call it the Brazilian handcuff in this case. Tie your hand behind your back and pound the face off you, or until you either tap out to strikes or get submitted. That's what he does. That's why he's called the Brazilian Habib. I think he probably does that against Parker Porter here. He can probably set a pace that Porter will not be able to do. But we've seen him, and what I meant is his body lock takedown is sensational. He's very strong in those positions, and we've seen him lifting guys up. He will have to be a little bit more sneaky, a little bit more technical against a guy like Parker Porter. But I think about the size difference is the only intriguing part of this fight for me. I think that Almeida is head and shoulders a better fighter than him. Doesn't really make sense why they've matched him up with this guy. Why don't you just get in a fucking light heavyweight? But howsoever, it is what it is. And here we are. Sean, what do you think?
Do you know one point, an interesting point? Have you noticed over the last while, there's been like some very good Brazilian wrestlers coming through? Like you look at Almeida and your man Carvalho, and I know he's a very good karate guy as well, but he showed in his last fight against that Russian chap that he can fucking wrestle as well. That's an interesting thing I noticed coming through. Do you know the thing about Parker Porter? Look, he's a big fat bastard, let's be honest here, but he carries his weight well. You know, he's athletic at that weight. He can move well. He's pretty fast and he hits very fucking hard. And as you alluded to, Ian, I actually don't think it'll be that easy for Almeida to just walk across the cage and take him down. He's a tree trunk of a man as well. Like he's, he looks about 5'4", but the size of him, he's wider than he is tall. Like he's a big bastard of a man. He's going to be a hard man to take down. Now I'm sure there's ways around it, and there is ways Almeida will be able to take him down. I think he will, but I think this will prove a lot for Almeida. Honestly, I remember Artem had to go at me for saying Colby Covington should go up to 185 to see what it's, and he was like, he won't be able to wrestle lads. Put an extra, 15 pounds of weight on and then try to wrestle someone and see how tough it is. This is an extra 60 pounds of weight that Parker Porter's having to wrestle. Let's see how tough that is for him to do, or that Almeida is going to have to wrestle. Let's see how tough for him that is. But look, overall, Almeida is a very good fighter. Very, very, very good wrestler. I kind of want to see a bit of his strike in here. If we can see it to tell a bit of a story, that'll be interesting. Parker Porter's a good striker. And, I think this fight could actually show us more than maybe we're expecting. I also like Almeida inside the distance by a TKO KO on the ground plus 375. Not bad.
Oh, gadoosh. We're going to be doing our bets of the week now. I think that's going to be up.
Fuck. Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, I know. Thanks for reminding myself. I think, I'll go to you, Harry. Parker Porter, for me, for a big guy like Sean says, has a good gas tank as well. He doesn't. He's in his previous fight. His last fight he didn't gas out. The previous fight before that, he kind of slowed down a little bit. But I was impressed that the pace that he set, his forward movement, he didn't slow down at all, and that was what got him the win basically in his last fight. You're not as confident as me and Sean that he's going to be able to keep the fight on the feet as easy as maybe some of Almeida's previous opponents?
Yeah, I can't imagine he is. I think I'll just talk a little bit about why I think the Brazilian wrestling has come up so drastically, and I think that's because the general meta of sport grappling has changed. The the relationship between playing guard and playing passing guard has sort of disbanded a lot, and guys are adding wrestling, either wrestling up from guard or just general wrestling on the feet. Obviously, if you wrestle up from guard, you're then wrestling on the feet. Has become so much more prominent in sport grappling that, you know, Brazil is still one of the major hubs of grappling, and as soon as those metas have started to change, the gyms in Brazil have proliferated, and that, I think, would have spawned a lot of change in the wrestling department in MMA as well. So I think that's one of the reasons that the meta has changed. Is it's been driven not only from MMA but also from sport grappling, which is obviously absolutely massive in Brazil. Now, for Jolton Almeida specifically, obviously he's taken fights at heavyweight. I'm sure he trains with a lot of heavyweight guys. And there was something that Dan Hardy said that stuck with me in a seminar once, and that's that, you know, the bigger that a guy's legs are, if you put two tree trunks together, it's way easier to knock over than if the tree trunks are splayed in a nice stable direction. And I think the same is to be said for Parker Porter. I think if Jolton Almeida can get anywhere near a back body lock, you don't need to pull him and throw him and whatever. You just find a hip and knock him over. Like, that 265-pound frame absolutely goes down. And as soon as he goes 4-point, you know, the thing I think that is going to be a struggle for Parker Porter is not necessarily stopping the takedown. It's going to be continuously getting back up when he has been taken down. You know, moving that frame and carrying another guy's weight and lifting him back up and lifting yourself back up and then fighting frames and hand fighting. It's going to be exhausting regardless of who you are. So for me, I don't find that Jolton Almeida will have too much of a struggle getting it down. And then when he does get it down, I think it's just a question of, does he drain the gas tank of Parker Porter, allowing him to get back up to mat return him, or does he just finish him there?
Indeed. I think it's something that Sean has been saying time and time again, is that not giving up on your takedown. If it doesn't work, and it might be harder for Almeida at the start of this fight than it will be towards the end or whenever the fight is ending. So it's just not giving up on that takedown. And like you said, Harry, consistent takedown defense is tiring, especially for a 265-pound man. That moves us on to the next fight, Omar Morales versus Uros Medic. Medic is coming into this fight bit after getting choked out by Jalen Turner, which is, yeah, that's okay. Jalen Turner is a serious prospect. Jonathan Pierce picked up a rear naked choke over Morales in his last fight. Harry, what's your thoughts on this?
The crux of this fight is pace. Morales likes a slower, more methodical pace to his fights. He likes to see shots that are coming and land his own shots. Uros Medic is the absolute opposite. He wants 100 miles an hour from the very, very start. In the Jalen Turner fight, as you said, no shame whatsoever in losing to Jalen Turner. I think he's a fantastic fighter and somebody that's going to have a really, really fun career in the UFC. However, it wasn't just the rear naked, right? We got to remember that he hurt Medic badly. Medic turtled up and Jalen Turner just took a sub because it was there, right? It wasn't, you know, he's like, fuck, I could pound this guy out or I could take the easier route and just sub him. And that's what he did. I think the question is what happens in the first round here. Medic throws everything with bad intentions. Everything is big, wild shots. He's long and rangy for the division. Morales isn't a small man by any stretch of the imagination. So I'll be very interested to see what happens in the first round. I think the longer the fight goes, the more this leans into Morales' favor. But if this ends in the first round, I find it very difficult to see that it's not Uros Medic getting his hand raised.
Indeed. Well said. From one Morales onto another Morales. And that is Vince Morales, who is going in to take on Jonathan Martinez in the bantamweight division. Martinez is moving down in weight class for this fight, and I expect him to be the bigger, stronger guy here against Morales. Vince Morales. We're talking about too many Moraleses here, fellas, but whatever. I think Morales himself has a good jab, wants to probably fight in boxing range. And I think on the other end that Martinez is going to want to fight on the outside and use his kicks. Martinez doesn't like to get too close to his opponents, because every time Martinez gets into boxing range, he ends up getting hurt. It happened in his last fight, and it's going to happen here if he lets Vince Morales kind of come in and land his big power shots from the inside. I think Morales was hurt with leg calf kicks before, and I think that's what we're going to see here from Martinez. He's going to try and land those big calf kicks, try and slow down his opponent. And it'll be, I think this is probably the highlight fight on the prelim cards for me. It's going to be a banger. There's going to be a lot of body trauma, a lot of head trauma in this fight. And Sean Sheen has a big smile on his face. I don't know if he's laughing at me or what's going on.
I was clicking through their Tapology bit, and Vince Morales in his Tapology picture has a picture of himself in a cage with the words "Invincible" on his t-shirt. It's the worst t-shirt I have ever seen in my life. His nickname isn't even Invincible. It should be Invincible. Oh, his nickname is Vendetta. But my God, just go to Tapology and look at Vince Morales' picture. He's standing in front of a mountain, right? There's like an electricity pole just behind him, a little bit of a tree, and he's wearing this stupid fucking jumper. And honestly,
it's like one of those
MMA.
screensavers that you see pop up on your Google Chrome screen when you have nothing. And it's long sleeve as well. It's like, come on.
Long sleeve t-shirt. You look like you're like in the middle of
You look like you're from the early 90s
Utah
and you're going to see a Smashing Pumpkins concert. That's what he looks like.
It's truly awful. Truly awful.
So there we go. Breaking down style, breaking down fights. That's what we do here on the preview show. Who else do we have on this card? Let's get slim pickings after this fight, to be honest. Chase Hooper takes on Philippe Piccolaris. What would you have to say about Chase Hooper and this fight?
He's stone useless, is what
he's
I
not
say.
good. Yeah, he's not good.
Can he strike yet?
Probably not. He's been he trained Wonderboy for a weekend. Maybe can he strike?
I mean, look,
that's not great either, though, to be fair. But
no,
that's the question, isn't it? The question is, has he learned a bit of striking? If he hasn't, he's going to get absolutely fucking whacked here. He's going to dive on a heel hook from nothing and probably get pounded out, or maybe finish it. Who knows? Like, we've talked about this ad nauseum. If your sole route to winning a fight is submitting somebody, it's going to be a very, very, very tough career for you. A very tough career. If you have no ability to drag the fight to where you're going without taking a significant amount of damage, it's going to be a very, 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 very difficult career for you. And Chase Hooper, in all that we've seen over his UFC tenure, has shown us nothing to believe that he has vast improvements in his stand-up. And that's a problem.
A big problem as well with Chase Hooper. He just doesn't have the athleticism to fight in a sport that's becoming more and more athletic all the time and full of athletes. Like before, everyone used to say, oh, look, there's this person who's trained better than this other person and they're going to win because they have better training. And that's still the case for a lot of people. But if you go in there and you have 5 years of training and you're an athlete like Max Holloway, and you go in there and you have 5 years of training, you're an athlete like Chase Hooper, well, the Max Holloway athlete or the Peter Yan athlete or the Aljamain Sterling athlete is always going to beat the guy like Chase Hooper, who's thin and weak and not fast. It's just always going to happen. He just does not have the athleticism to be a top-level fighter. He can't move in the way that these other guys move. Jiu-jitsu is not a good enough base to get you through in mixed martial arts these days. And a guy like his last opponent, Steven Peterson, not a great fighter. I know a good striker, good wrestler, good jiu-jitsu, okay everywhere. And he is a better athlete than him. He is stronger than him. He doesn't, he doesn't give up. And he's going to win that fight 10 times out of 10. Piccolaris is like a worse version of Steven Peterson, I would say, slightly. And we'll see how much of a worse version you need than Philippe Piccolaris to beat Chase Hooper after this. Like, if he can't beat Piccolaris, he can't be in the UFC, I don't think, after this.
Yeah, 100%. And I would agree on everything that you said there. Harry, anything to add? Because the last fight on the card is a strawweight between Elisa Reid and Sam Hughes. In the strawweight division, Sam Hughes snapped a 3-fight win streak in her last fight by winning a majority decision and probably saved her job. She'll look to kind of keep that run going here. That opens up the card and that rounds us off for the preview. Just 11 fights to look forward to on Saturday night. Once again, thank you to the great man Harry Powell and another great man Seánie Sheehan for joining me for the preview show a day early today. Hopefully we didn't catch everybody out, but scheduling issues kind of forced it upon us this week, but it's all well and good. EatAllReal.com. Head on over there and grab yourself some delicious natural protein bars. All Real Nutrition. EatAllReal.com. Enter the code word SevereMMA. Get yourself 15% off. Those bars are delicious. Those peanut butters, I haven't tasted them yet, but I know they're delicious. New peanut butter tubs out this week. I don't know whether you've get the chance to try them yet, Sean. Maybe send.
I hate peanut butter, like despise peanut butter, but I'm gonna try them and see if I like them. Then they're nice in the world. Do you know what? I've been all I've left here, right, is peanut butter bar, and there's a reason for that, and chocolate orange as well, because everyone knows I don't like chocolate orange, and I've ate all the rest of the bars, so I think I need more bars here. I ate one today after I was between podcasts and I had nothing to eat all day. The energy they give you is actually like I don't care. They've paid us the money now for the sponsorship. It doesn't matter. The energy they give you is actually unbelievable. I'm going to order more out of my own volition. They're actually lovely. An Irish company, a Kerry company, on the up and up. Fucking support them, lads, and
support them. I ate one and I ran a marathon. Believe it or not. No, I didn't, but I'm going to say it anyway. EatAllReal.com. Code word SevereMMA. Get you some.